反正等下，就我，
Hi everyone, how are you all doing? Any basis kids who are starting school?
I'm from basis.
Do we have anyone who is starting school?
Yes.
Sorry, I didn't. Hi Laya, or Leah, are you starting school?
Not starting school.
Not yet.
No, I already been to basis for 4 years.
Oh, so did you guys start school yesterday?
Last week.
On Monday.
Yeah,
We
Monday.
start on Monday.
Which basis are you from?
Nanji.
Oh, you're from Nanjing. I didn't see you on campus. Are you in elementary school?
Yes, I'm in 5th grade.
Oh, Christ, fifth grade. That's awesome you're here. So today we're going to be talking about the second wave of imperialism. It's also a very heavy topic. It's not really fun. And can I ask if anyone is taking AP World History or any AP History this year? Nobody? So,
History.
yeah, for any history courses, are you guys writing essays for your history classes?
Haven't chosen, sorry.
Are you in basis too?
I don't know what space is, but I'm taking IBDP.
Oh, cool. So yeah, Basis is a school and we have different campuses. We take the AP curriculum, and in which we're going to do something called DBQ, which is, it's document-based question. You have to read a lot of documents and then write an essay, which is something that I'll get into today just because I feel there are several people who has approached to me saying that they want to learn DBQ, how to write good essays. And I just thought that, yeah, I think history, a lot of it's about how to express stuff. So we're just going to get into a little bit today. It's not hard. It's just the first time you see it's probably a bit scary, but it is really not. So, right. We're gonna start at 8 exact. I just want to say big thanks to everybody who's coming here because it's Tuesday. Some of us have school. I have school. Uh, and yeah, thank you so much for coming. I went to a soccer game on Sunday, so I couldn't have class that night. But yeah, it was really cool. So we're just gonna start now. It's 7:58. I'm gonna start just because we have a few stuff to cover today. Can you guys all see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So as I said today we're going to be talking about the second wave of imperialism and shift in power. Um, do you guys remember our first wave of imperialism class? So we had that class for our second lesson in our whole course, and we talked about the motivations of the first wave of imperialism. Can anybody tell me the three G's? Like why did the Europeans suddenly wanted to um, colonize a bunch of new places? Anybody have any idea? Can remember anything? I'll start with one. So I'm gonna start with gold because they found a lot of wealth, a lot of resources, and obviously minerals, rare minerals like gold and silver in the New World. Anybody can say the next one or next two. If you're too shy, you can just type in the chat box. Hmm. I'll start. I'll continue. So after Go, we have God. So at the time, the European nations were really heavily emphasizing on Christianity, and they really want to spread this religion all across the world, no matter it's Protestantism or it's Catholicism. We have the Jesuits, if you guys remember from our Protestant Reformation class, which is the third lesson. And then we also have the last one is glory, the internal competition between the European nations because they all want to get more resources due to this economic idea of mercantilism, which is the idea that if the world has a fixed amount of resources, if one country get a piece of the pie, the other loses it. Today we're going to be looking at mercantilism again. Yes, the world started to practice capitalism and market economy, but still a lot of countries, especially its government, rely a lot on mercantilism and emphasizing on maximizing its exports and minimizing its imports. So the second wave of imperialism is a little bit different than the first one, but its foundation is essentially the same. It's about imperialism. Can anybody remind me what imperialism mean? We talked about this definition about imperialism. We also talked about annexation, colonialism. And then somebody just tell me, what is imperialism? Anybody, if you get it wrong, that's okay. We just have to talk. Maybe I get it wrong. Maybe I talk wrong. You just have like let out your answer, let out your voice. Anybody? You can private chat me. You can in your 腾讯会, you can do 发送制 and then select me, select Jessica, and then send me a message. And it's okay. Nobody else is gonna see if you get it wrong, if you get it right. Anybody have any idea what imperialism was? People in WeChat, you can also chat. I can see your chat today, which is really lucky. If you know what imperialism is, please type it because we need interactions. I don't see any answers so far. That's okay. So imperialism is the idea of robbing other people's stuff, robbing other countries' stuff or other regions' stuff. You're taking stuff that don't belong to you. It's like bullying, but in a more serious and definitely wider perspective. And so for imperialism, we talked about different forms. We talk about colonializing an area. For example, the 13 colonies in the United States before it got independent from from Britain. From the American War of Independence, we talked about how South America, Inca and Aztec was being conquered into New Mexico and became colonies under the Spanish Empire. These are all colonies. And then we also talked about another form, which is the idea of annexation, which is what we're going to look at today, specifically for Korea, because Korea was being annexed by Japan. And we talked about annexation was the idea of sort of legalizing colonialism, and you're using like formally colonializing using legal justification. And then we also talked about economic imperialism, which is a huge part today because we're going to be talking about the Opium War, we're going to be talking about the Banana Republic, and these two are very typical economic imperialism. And even to this day, we see imperialism. And for every single country we talk about today, these are imperial countries. So we're talking about imperial British Empire, imperial French Empire, imperial Germany Empire, imperial Japanese Empire. These are not the countries we know today. These are the imperial countries. The British Empire and the French Empire collapsed, as well as Germany, as well as Imperial Japan, collapsed after the Second World War, which is our final lesson next week. So very interestingly, today is going to be our second last class. So if you're interested in US history, we're going to have a brand new course starting this fall. But for our summer history, world history course, it's going to be ending after next class. So right. If you have any questions, feel free to DM me in the chat box or just call it out today. We're also going to be looking at a poem today, so if you're interested in reading it out loud, you're highly encouraged to do so. So today we're going to be talking about some justification for imperialism. We're going to be talking about some revolts from the indigenous. We're going to be talking about the economic imperialism, and then of course World War I, how it happened, a little bit about what World War I. I'm going to send a link of video in our group chat for World War I, just because I think World War I it's really fun and we don't really have to spend any time in class to talk about it. You can definitely like check out these wider known topics, including the Russian Revolution by yourself. In my opinion, our class is just trying trying to expand our horizon from the more conventional topics. And last but not least, we're going to be talking about something about the DBQ writing, which if you're not taking AP, you probably don't need it, but I'm pretty sure that even you're taking A level or IB, you have to read and engage with the documents. And I highly encourage you to stay until that point, because that's like the every class we have like a little discussion on how to learn history. And I think it's going to be helpful for you, even if you're not taking that test. So for a little bit recap, last time we talked about the Industrial Revolution. It's really highly connected to what we're going to be talking about today, which is imperialism, because without Industrial Revolution, there's literally a very less likelihood where imperialism is going to happen at such a big scale. So we talked about how what made the industrialization possible. Does anybody remember what we talked about? Why Britain at the time became the first country to industrialize? Anybody remember? People from WeChat, you can also comment. And also, guys, I have emphasized that every single class, if you're listening to this class as a story, then yes, you're welcome to do so because it's an open class. But if you want to learn knowledge and you want to really get engaged with critical thinking, not really just critical thinking, because I think this term is really cliche and it's being overused. But if you just want to think and want to improve, then you have to like actually reflect. History, yes, it's a lot of it's about repetition, but you just gotta engage. It's really important. You don't have to speak, but you have to like mentally get engaged. So let me just remind you all, we talked about the agricultural revolution, in which it allowed a lot of food, a lot of surplus for the farmers, so that the farmers don't really have to work on the farm. A lot of them just went to the city, which led to urbanization. A lot of people didn't really have to starve at the point. We have the potato as the staple crop, very easy to grow. And in Britain specifically, we also have a natural advantage with waterways, in which it made all the trades happen very easily, smoothly, conveniently. So that's what, and also we have coals, which made the first wave of industrialization very possible. So this is the stuff we talked about last course about what made the industrial revolution happen and make it possible, specifically in Europe, in Britain. And then we also talked about the impacts of industrialization. We talked about their rising middle class. There's more leisure activities. There's also, unfortunately, child labor, lots of exploitation of workers. Not only that, we also talk about the mother country and the colony. This is a bit like we talked about it actually for a few classes already. This is also what we're going to talk about today because it's really highly related to imperialism, and the second wave of imperialism specifically. We also talked about capitalism, socialism, communism, which are products from the industrialization because people are actually reflecting on the society. We have capitalism as the primary engine of the industrial revolution, and then ultimately because Karl Marx and Engels thought that this whole system it's really just battles between the classes. So ultimately, they proposed communism from their book Communist Manifesto, which wanted to have this society or this world with no class at all. Everybody's equal and we get the same amount of resources. Nobody is unemployed, nobody's being exploited, and nobody is like big over the other. And we also talked about how these all like, and as well as socialism, which is in between sort of, but definitely more leaning toward communism. We talked about how different how these three isms are different. What we talked about their advantages, disadvantages, and if you're interested in that, I also posted a PDF, a very detailed description of all three. And if you're interested, you should definitely check it out. It's in our group chat. We also talked about the new inventions and their impacts, what made the industrialization happen possible. Definitely, these inventions plays a critical role. Not only are they just physical machineries, but also we have the invention of the assembly line. We talked about new production method, the interchangeable parts, and their impact is definitely making everything production so fast, so much faster and more productive, making industrialized revolution very happening quickly in Europe. And of course, not only in Europe we have industrialization, we also talked about modernization in Japan in the Meiji Restoration and the 100-day reform in China. We talked about why the Meiji Restoration was successful, but on the other hand, the 100-day reform wasn't. And can anybody recall the reason why? Just one reason. We just need one reason right now. Why the Meiji Restoration was a success while the 100-day reform in China was a failure? Can anybody remind me? That's okay. So let's just go over a little bit again. So the Meiji Restoration was fundamentally successful because it goes to the essence, it goes to the roots. So Meiji Restoration not only just buy new inventions, buy new battleships, buy new technology, but also they actually educate people. They reformed their system fundamentally. For example, they adopted the American education system, the German military system, and they're building upon that system from fundamentally educating people how to use those systems. However, the 100-day reform, we talked about how yes, they bought probably the world-class battleship, especially during the Sino-Japanese War, but they failed miserably just because, first of all, it's not supported by a Dowager Cixi, unfortunately. There are also internal rebellion, like the Boxer Rebellion. Outside, we have the Opium War, which made everything so chaotic, very unstable to make modernization happen. We also talked about how, as I said, new technology nobody knows how to use them. So fundamentally, we have a gap between how to use them. So the gap between usage and the machinery as a product. So without really knowing how to use it, it's just the machinery, every technology, high technology are just there as decorations. So, and I also talked about how I think this is very important for us to reflect just because the Meiji Restoration and the 100-day reform honestly are just what we see today. If you don't solve from this fundamental roots, it's really hard to really solve anything. You're just buying stuff on top of each other, and you're not really doing anything that is actually practical for the changes. We also talked about the impacts of government supports. I think I talked about how the Ottoman Empire was really corrupted at the time, and there's also internal rebellion, making Ottoman Empire modernization also extremely slow, very ineffective. I also talked about the Russian Empire at the time, really just Russia at the time, the Tsarist government, the Tsarist monarch, I should say. They wasn't really a fan of modernization. Yes, they built the Trans-Siberian Railroad, but internally they still have feudalism, they still have serfdom, which is the idea of just essentially slavery. But ultimately, we talked about how the impacts of government during this industrial revolution was really important as well. We talked about the three countries that did not got favor from the government, and so they did not successfully reform as quickly as the other ones. The European nations, specifically Britain, got a lot of support from the government, so they definitely reformed much effective and quicker than the others, the three that are not successful. So far, do we have any question? Oh my God, I'm so sorry, people. Yeah. So far, do we have any question? Okay. If we don't have any question, we're going to continue. So we're in the year of 1750 to 1900. Yes, we're really close to all the fun stuff. But actually, today we're gonna talk about World War I too. So it's really just 1918, honestly. Next class we're gonna be talking about World War One. Really just the end of World War One. We're gonna be talking about the Treaty of Versailles, and then World War Two, Cold War, and then modernization, globalization. All those fun stuff that are more attachable, like to us, really. in my opinion, to me at least, because it's more recent. But we're just a step there, so let's be a little bit patient here. This is the period of a lot of changes across the world, shifts in power. There are countries who rose like a hell lot. There are also countries who got exploited. They're the unlucky ones, and we're gonna explore who exactly are them and why did it happen. So, time checkpoint. This is the time that Germany unified. So last class we talked about that. Germany didn't unify yet. Germany wasn't even a country at the time. Germany was experiencing a civil war, and Germany at the time, they didn't have any power. Before Germany, we have the Holy Roman Empire. After the Napoleonic War, which is a series of work, if you're interested in the Napoleonic War, just remind me in the group chat today and I'll send you videos about the Napoleonic War. This is the same thing with everything. If you see something that you don't know and you want to know in the slide, because we're not going to get into everything in detailed, just text me in our group chat and I'll send you stuff, okay? Don't be shy. Please just tell me. We really need that information for everybody to make sense, because history is like a chain. If you don't understand one thing, it's really hard to sort of link to the next one. So the end of the Napoleonic War means the end of the Holy Roman Empire, which is the empire before that Germany was being formed. So Germany ultimately unified after the Napoleonic War. It recovered from the losses, and it quickly became a big industrial power, which is really cool. It's similar to Japan, like it industrialized very quickly. Of course, they had the role model from Japan, from Britain and France, so it's like easier for them to copy everything. But still, they're very fast in developing their industrial machines and stuff. So, in order to prevent European conflicts as a new nation in the European theater, Otto von Bismarck, who is the at the time you can say the chancellor of Germany, he organized the Berlin Conference in 1884. This is a very important checkpoint because the Berlin Conference is going to set the tone for everything that's going to come ahead: the imperialism, the colonialism, the chaos, the really just the brutality under and also the long-term legacy we'll see today. People know that, like everybody here knows that. I just want to make sure everybody here knows that Africa is going through a lot of chaos. We're not going to say chaos, but civil wars constantly in recent decades, and a lot of it can literally trace back to this 1884 Berlin Conference. So what exactly is the Berlin Conference? Let's take a look. So the Berlin Conference took place in Berlin, as the name suggests. It's hosted by Germany, and it's hosted in 1884. The rules are basically what they're trying to do is Berlin wanted to split Africa up because Africa is a place full of resources, So I have a picture in the next slide that's going to explain all the resources to like sort of just make sense why this whole scramble of Africa happened. But European nations desired resources for their manufacturing and industrialization. So Berlin sort of like they want to be the lawyer and they want to be the good person, so that they're distributing all the resources to the European nations. So what they did, they set up some rules. First of all, there's no slavery. And I just want to say, at this time, at this stage, every single nation on this planet don't have slavery anymore. Like it's abolished. But the problem is slavery, like slavery and forced labor, they're essentially the same thing, right? So in those colonies you see after the Berlin Conference in Africa and Oceania and Asia, you will still see forced labor. They're just not in the form of slavery, but just keep in mind that there's essentially like little difference between the two terms. So even if it's like forced labor, it's still like literally slavery. And so second thing is that there's no interference with other colonies. So I just want to ask anyone, why do you think that the rule set in the Berlin Conference, the second rule says that there's no interference with other colonies between the European nations? Can you guys tell me why? Like any hypothesis, any guesses? Anybody? You know, as I said, you can definitely just DM me in the chat. You don't have to say it to everybody. You can just send to me privately. And we need discussions, or it's going to be really boring just me talking all the time. All right. So for for a little bit of context, the Napoleonic War was a conflict between all the European nations at the time. It was really chaotic. A lot of these European nations didn't go along. European nations has never ever gone perfectly along until the formation of the European Union, which for a purpose was trying to ally every single like big powers and also just small powers for like protection as well as unity. But the problem here is at the time where the Berlin Conference was being held, the European nations didn't get along. So the rule number two, which it says no interference with the other colonies, is emphasizing that you don't mess with me and I don't mess with you, so that no conflict is going to be elicited in the colonies. So it's really important at the time to keep peace in within the European nations because, as we said, European nations they rival all the time. And the third rule is that Europeans must occupy a colony to keep ownership. So you can't say that you're not here, like you're physically not here and you're just taking that colony. You can't do that. So we're gonna see how they actually took up every place. You have companies going in, big companies that are doing economic imperialism. You have military going in. So it's whole lot of things going on. So all those scrambles of Africa, without getting like yet further into specifically what they did, we want to know that this whole thing divided African ethnic group because the problem is that the European nations they didn't really care about the ethnic group who are living in there. They really just care about the areas, how big the land they're getting. So the problem is in Africa, people are living in tribes and in tribal groups with like different ethnic groups, and that's their personal identity. But the problem with the Cerebral of Africa is that the European nations are literally neglecting these ethnic groups, and so they only, as I said, only care about the area, the physical area. So it led to a lot of problem, even to this day, that a lot of Africans are really losing their identity, not necessarily national identity, but a lot of their cultures, languages, interactions are being lost from this process of imperialism. So today, even to this day, you have civil wars. Like people are asking all the time, why are there civil wars everywhere? Not only just in Africa, but also in the Middle East. Why are there just so many chaos there? It's really like a lot of this can trace back not only to this time, but even further to the first class when we began this lesson, even further than that, even to the ancient history. It's a lot of ideological difference, but for Africa specifically, it's really from the trauma in the first wave of imperialism where a lot of Africans were being shipped to the Americas for slavery, and now they're losing identity once again after the scramble of Africa. So I'm talking about a lot about scramble Africa. I feel like I haven't really like show you pictures about it. So here we're gonna go. So this is the idea of scramble of Africa, literally scrambling it up. Africa used to be like not like this, but they're really just splitting it up. And from our last slide, I talked about how Africa is a really resourceful place. You have all the resources industrialization need. You have the rare minerals like diamonds. You have gold in South Africa. You also need like essential industrialization tools like oil, like petroleum, natural gas, iron, and then also some copper. And you also need food like coffee. Well, it's a cash crop, but people love coffee, right? You have tea, which is another cash crops. You need grains. These are edible food, right? So all of these you can find them. We also have cash crops for textile industry like cotton, where you can see like all the color-coded place. You will see that they all have a resource. So all these resources are what the European nations desired. They wanted those resources. So a little bit of the motifs. Why did the Europeans wanted to imperialize again? Last time we talked about industrial revolution, definitely that is one. We see all the materials they need for industrial revolution to really just further that. But compared to the first wave of imperialism, we talked about gold, God, and glory. We really have like a new ideology here, which is racism. This is the time that racism actually came in. So we're gonna be talking about how this idea of racism suddenly arose from nowhere. But racism was a big thing, and the European nations, some of the people in the European nations, not only just the European nations, but also the United States. The United States also colonized places, even though they claim they're a very liberal country. But really, racism was a big thing, and it was there, and people there, like people in European nations as well as the United States, really believe that they have the obligation to educate, to civilize the people in Africa. Not their place really. So this idea furthered on into their imperialism, their second wave of imperialism. So I want to look at one very, very famous, um, one very, very famous this poem called "The White Man's Burden." It's so famous that it's going to be one of your readings for. If you're learning this period of history, you're gonna read this, and I'm going to randomly select someone because before I select someone, does anybody want to volunteer to read? If not, I'm going to randomly select someone. Okay, Reina. Reina, can you read this poem for us?
Okay.
All right.
So it's oh, take up the white man's burden. Send forth the best ye breed. Go bind your sons to exile, to serve your captives' need, to wait in heavy harness, flutter folk and wild, your new caught sullen people, half devil, half child. Take up the white man's burden, in patience to abide, to weave the thread of terror, and tread the shore of pride, by open speech and simple, and 100 times made plain to seek another's profit, and work another's gain. Take up the white man's burden, and the savage words of peace. Fill full the mouths of famine and bid the sickness cease. And when your goal is nearest the end of the other's thought, which sloth had hidden folly, bring all your hopes to naught. Take up the white man's burden, no tawdry rules of gain, but toil of serf and sweeper, the tale of common sense. The poor ye shall not enter, the roads ye shall not tread. Go mark them with your living, and mark them with your dead. Take up the white man's burden, they reap his own reward. Blame those ye better, the hate of those ye guard, cry of the host ye humor. Slowly toward the light. Why brought he us from bondage, our loved Egyptian night? Take up the white man's burden, yet dare not stoop to less, nor call too loud on freedom, to cloak your weariness. By all ye cry or whisper, by all ye live or do, the silent sullen peoples shall weigh your God and you. Take up the white man's burden, have done with childish days. The lightly proffered flower, the easy unrugged prey. Come on now to search your manhood through all the St. Claus years, cold edged with steel, bought wisdom, the judgment of your peers.
Awesome. I think you're doing a fantastic job. I think you deserve like the biggest applaud, Reina. You're doing awesome. And yes, this is a very hard poem. A lot of big words, a lot of words that we probably don't know. But from only looking at the title without looking anything, take up white man's burden. What do you guys think? What do you think the poem is about? For a little bit of context, really, I think it's unfair if I don't give you any context. But the context for this poem, The White Man's Burden, you probably have seen it's written in 1899, and it's written by this guy. This imperial poet. He was born in India, boarding school in Britain. He's a journalist in India, fame in Britain, and marriage and lived for a time in the USA. And he was this poem was a response to the American take over the Philippines after the Spanish American War. This is really important because if you're learning U.S. history with if we're learning U.S. history this fall, you're gonna know exactly what's happening. But this is the idea that the U.S. annexed, which is basically a term to say illegally taking over, annexing or colonializing Philippines after the Spanish-American War. It's a more complicated situation. There are debates at the time, but you just have to know that the American did this. They took over the Philippines. And this poem is essentially mailing to the Americans, encouraging them to take up colonial responsibilities like Britain did, because he's writing from a perspective of an Indian, of a Briton, of a British who was in a British colony, who was born in British colony India. A fun fact I wanna talk about is that do you guys know there's a movie as well as a book called The Jungle Book? 人猿泰山，大家知不知道这本书？
I know.
Oh, Amber knows. Awesome. So this poem is written by the same guy who wrote that book. So, very racist guy. This poem, of course, his book is awesome. Honestly, we love the movie. We love the book. We love how Disney really just shot everything. It was a pretty impressive film and IP. But this poem, getting back from the white man's burden, was seen as a justification for imperialism. So when we look at imperialism today, we will be like, why is there this thing? Like, why do you guys even want to get other people's stuff? Like, we know that they want to get more resources, but ideologically, people actually thought it is something that they should do as an obligation. It's the white man's burden. It's their burden to help other people, to educate, to civilize them. And from this poem, it's really funny of you. It's very ironic and sarcastic even think about it. He is from a white man's perspective, he's sort of just saying, we're doing it for the sake of you guys. Like, we're not doing it for us. We're trying to do it for the sake of you. And he's doing a very somber tone. It's sort of like he's doing the benefits for other people. So the themes that we're exploring from this poems include imperial duty and sacrifice, because it's really just talking about, it frames colonialism, this idea as a noble, uh, and he's like saying that the colonizers are suffering from hardship, from toil, from misunderstanding, while supposedly bringing progress. And like literally, he's saying that this burden is not only like ruling colonies, who are uncivilized by definition, according to him, but also enduring ingratitude. Like, people are not thankful from the people who are being ruled. And it seems like very unreasonable for us right now, but at the time, this is a common justification of imperialism. This is not like a one man saying. This is common conception in the West. People thought colonialism is a burden for them. It's like they're doing the good for other people. But ultimately, this is a justification. It's not, we know it's not true. It's racism, but it was there. And we also see that in the first stanza are paragraphs of a poem. We have the last sentence saying, "Your new caught stolen peoples, half devil and half child." It's really just describing the people who are being colonized as this in dehumanization. It's really just inhumanizing them. They're not human anymore. They're half devil and half child. So it's suggesting that those people who are being colonized are both morally corrupt and intellectually immature. So this really reflects a deeper racial hierarchy at the time, that the Europeans are always higher and more prestigious than the non-Europeans, because the non-Europeans are incapable of self-rules. So this idea of like civilizing mission, as white man's burden, is why when we see it, it's a very disgusting idea, but it was there. So I just want to say that a lot of things we see today doesn't make any sense, but it was physically present at the time. So once again, a lot of people just applauded virtually for Reina. I think you did a great job. Thank you so much for reading this long poem. You took a lot of courage. I want to personally applaud for you. Good job, good job. Any questions so far about the poem? And I just want to add a little bit more about this poem. So there are a lot of criticism at the time about this poem. Um, for example, a very famous English author, his name is Mark Twain. A lot of people probably know his very famous works. He was a USA he was a USA author, and he ridiculed. He likes to do a lot of jokes. I mean, sarcastic jokes about for criticism, really. And he's saying that this poem is a hypocrisy. So hypocrisy. So they're just trying to justify it, but they're not doing the good thing. So it's sort of they're trying to be faking everything, faking that they're the nice one, and trying to emphasize how suffering they're going through. And today, this poem is widely seen as a racist propaganda that rationalized exploitation, forced labors, as well as cultural domination. So, before we get into what happened in Europe, and I really appreciate all the emojis. Thank you so much. But thank you so much again. Thank you to Reina for reading this. So, yes. Any questions so far? All right, we're gonna continue then.
I sent a question.
Oh yeah, what is it? Amber, do you have a question?
I sent it to you in private.
Oh, okay, awesome. Yes, the Jungle Book is exactly what you're talking about. It's about this little boy who is being abandoned.
Live with a wolf.
Yes, exactly. The Jungle Book is exactly the story. Yes, exactly. It's I watched the movie. I didn't read the book, but it was a great movie. But yes, that book is written by the same person who wrote The White Man's Burden. Isn't that very sarcastic?
Oh.
Right. So, if we any more questions before we move on? All right, we're gonna move on. So, because we have a lot of stuff to go through, we're just gonna try to finish everything, and hopefully we can get into the DBQ stuff, which is, I know, very annoying. But this is another propaganda. Does anybody remember what propaganda was? We spent a lot of time on propaganda. My video was being censored, in China because of it. But anybody can remember what propaganda was? What is propaganda? So propaganda is the idea that um it's political cartoon, right? And not only just political cartoon, but things that sort of elicit this emotions, try and making you to do something. And this one is a very typical one. It's you're seeing Uncle Sam representing America, and this George thingy. I think I can't remember exactly his name, but he represents Britain. And they're carrying through the Asians, the Arabics, the you can see they're uncivilized. They're being portrayed as uncivilized, incapable of doing a lot of stuff. You see there's literally like early human. These are Africans, Cubans. And this is exactly what white man's burden is. They're carrying them through oppression, through superstition, through brutality, through ignorance, through barbarism, through slavery, and ultimately achieving to civilization. And that's the idea. The poem, this propaganda, these two things, these two materials are portraying what the white man's burden was, the ideology that people, I mean, the Europeans, the Westerners, had the obligation to civilize the uncivilized people. So if we go a little bit further, this is exactly what Africa looks like. This is before 1884, before the Berlin Conference. Yes, there were several. These are several empires, big empires like Egypt, and then this caliphate, Sokoto Caliphate. But ultimately, in 1913, right before the World War One, the World War One starts in 1914. You have The scramble of Africa. This Africa is being scrambled already. So we see the pink regions are United Kingdom, and then France in blue, and then Portugal in green. Spain, we have Italy a little bit here, and German Empire. So as we said, everything we're discussing today in class are imperial. So they're not the same thing as what we know today. So Germany today and Germany Empire are not the same thing. And we have several more like independent nations like Liberia, Ethiopia, and several more. So this is the scramble Africa because they have too many resources, and those Europeans wanted them desperately for industrialization. And also rivalry with the others. After the Berlin Conference, this is what Africa is being scrambled. And so I want to explore three countries specifically today with you all. So we're going to start with the British Empire, Imperial Germany, and Imperial Japan. The reason I wanted to do it is because I sort of want to go with the order that the British Empire, commonly known, was probably the most successful, the most powerful, and probably the older one. And then we have the new Republic of Germany at the time. Which is a newly industrialized country, and of course Japan as the only country that modernized itself successfully as a non-European nation was pretty impressive as well to talk about. So Britain, the British Empire, not the Britain you see today, the British Empire, they're the largest empire. We all know 日不落帝国, right? It literally means the empire on which the sun never sets. Very, very narcissistic. But Britain at the time was very powerful. They wanted to maintain trade routes, so they imperialized, India. So they had the British East India Company controlling India economically. We have the Suez Canal in Egypt. They could control this Suez Canal for a lot of trades and to get into India very quickly, very effectively as well. And then we have Africa and the Pacifics. But we're going to be focusing on Africa today. The economic motifs for the British to imperialize are, first of all, they need industries. They need industrialization. They need like raw materials for manufacturing and industrialization. They also need cash crops to benefits like tea, like coffee, like cotton for textile industry. And also we have settler colonies. This is in South Africa, and also there's also this colony very special in Australia in which they deport criminals there. But we're not going to be talking about in this course just because we're going to be covering like that for like 3 hours, but we don't have that time. So I just want to talk about Africa specifically today for Britain. If you want to know more, I can do videos, like separate videos for y'all. But definitely just let me know in the group chat if you need any of those services. I'm all there for you. So first of all, we're going to be talking about Egypt because Egypt was a strategically important, like geographically strategically important for the British. So the Suez Canal was opened in 1869. The Suez Canal is still in use today. And it's probably the most vital artery for the British Empire because it cut travel time to India by weeks. So this is the Suez Canal. You can still visit there. A lot of trades happen every single day there. And so the Britain, they purchased 40% of the canal shares in 1875 from the Egypt's government, and then ultimately it occupied Egypt in 1882 after a nationalist revolt that threatened foreign control. So you sort of see this gradual shift from economic control to political control. So from controlling the economy, from purchasing the shares, ultimately in seizing the government. This is a very typical economic imperialism. And next, I wanted to be talking about Sudan. Main reason I think Sudan is important is because this is a very, I think, a typical one. You see the loss of identity of people, because Sudan is going through some pretty serious humanitarian crisis nowadays. It's often being neglected by the majority of the world. But I've talked to the Sudanese gold miner, and it's really heartbreaking to hear what they're going through. But for Sudan, they got imperialized by the British at the time. And this is known as Anglo-Egyptian condominium. This long word right over here was their regime. And this is between 1899 to 1956. So more than a decade later, after World War II ended, this place was still being under UK control. So even after that after the fall of the British Empire, you still see control, like continuation of colonial rule. And so Sudan, a lot of people really just lost their identity in the nation. So this is a long-term legacy and I guess trauma that imperialism left on a lot of nations. In our DBQ today, we're gonna be talking about some like another idea, I guess another perspective really that argues differently. But again, history is about we have to like look at different opinions and different analysis. We should like look at different sources and analyze it by ourselves and come to our own conclusion. But definitely, I think the legacy should be remembered from the imperialism, especially what we're witnessing today. Humanitarian crisis, wars, these are all things that shouldn't be neglected, even if it's even if it's a geopolitical interest is not as high as other places. I think Sudan is where people's eyes need to lay upon. And then we also have South Africa. South Africa is known because I don't know if you guys parents have rings, but a lot of its gems like diamonds are from South Africa. South Africa is like naturally rich. They have minerals, they have gems, and it's like it's a settler colony. So South Africa was being first colonized by the Dutch. So these people are called the Boers or the Afrikaners. So I actually I have two South no actually I have three South African teacher in my school. One is from a Dutch descendant, the other one is from an English descendant. So you can sort of see another legacy from the age of imperialism at the time. And we have South Africa underwent the mineral revolution in 1867. So the people there discovered diamonds and gold. So it made South Africa central to Britain's global economy. And so this led to a lot of migration, especially labor migration. And also, it just created compound system for the African workers, which were really harsh and segregated conditions. And all of those things you see in Africa you will see its legacy later in the 20th century in apartheid, where racial discrimination was really serious. Really, all of this started back when the Dutch was colonizing all the way to the English. So a lot of legacy. You have to really have to consider things comprehensively. So I want to be talking about the Boers War, which is happening between the African farmers, so South Africa and Britain, because this is a demonstration of people resisting against imperialism at the time. So the Boers War, it's my God, Boers War. Yeah, this is a picture of the Boers War. So the Boers War there are two Boers War. We had the first Boers War in 1880 to 1881, and then the second one is in 1899 to 1902. The reason they fought was because Britain wanted to control over the land in South Africa, so they sort of like bought a lot of lands, including the lands of small independent farmers who are known as the Boers or the Afrikaners we just talked about. Because the lands, why they want to buy the lands? Because that's what we said. South Africa is naturally rich. It has a lot of gold, diamonds, and it's also important trade routes. So the first Boer War in 1880 to 1881 was a success for the Boers because they just defeated them and they kept control for the land for a while. But ultimately, almost 2 decades later, in 1899, the second Boer War was much more bloodier, and the British just burned down a lot of farms, a lot of villages from the Afrikaners, and an estimated about 28,000 Boer women and children died, as well as a lot of Black South Africans forced into concentration camps. So again, very bloody, but it ended with a British victory, and it created the Union of South Africa in 1910. So it became a country that's being ruled mainly by the white settlers. So the black, we can say the indigenous people there lost their political power, which is going to create troubles, especially during the apartheid that we're going to get into next class. Very, very serious racial segregation stuff. I remember I first approached this topic when I was in Australia, when I was having school there for a year. Very heavy stuff. And but as I said, these imperial legacies are there, and they're there even to that day, to this day. yeah. Any questions so far? I know there are a lot of information, so I just want to make sure. So like if we don't finish today, so the maximum time we're gonna stay is 9:30. If we don't finish everything, which I doubt, I think we're gonna finish everything, at least the lecture parts. If we don't finish everything, if you guys have time, we can get online, talk again, have another lesson. I'm all free except for tomorrow. But yes, any questions so far? So like Amber did, if you have any question, if you don't want to share with the whole class, you can just type it to me privately. Okay, I don't see any question. That's awesome. So let's just continue. So the next part is, oops, in Africa, there are other places that are being colonized by the British. So yes, the British colonized a lot of places. We all know not only just in Africa, we also know that Hong Kong is famous being colonized. But we also have Nigeria. Nigeria was Britain's largest African colonies because it's very populous, a lot of people there, and it's resource rich. So we have the palm oil. Palm oil was really important for industrial countries like soap, like producing for soap, for candles. And this is also, as I said, another form of economic imperialism. We have the Royal Niger Company, established British control before the formal colonialization. So it sort of like sets so it sort of like sees the government before it's being formally colonized by the British government. Last but not least, we have Ghana. Ghana is a very rich country. In history, we know that I don't know if you guys remember from our first lesson, we talked about the trans-Saharan trade route, but Ghana had a long history of having rich resources like salt, like gold, but now they also have cocoa, which is really important because cocoa is for coffee and for chocolate, and so it became the world's largest producer of cocoa cultivation by 20th century. And the British also invested it in railroads, ports, which all was really just invested toward the export economy. The idea that maximizing export is beneficial for the whole national, for domestic economy, which is building upon the idea of mercantilism. And then from all of this is just one country from the scramble of Africa. What do you guys think? What do you guys think? Like, if this is just Britain, we know that Britain is like the big brother of everyone. They're colonializing the most. But what do you guys think? Like, this is just only one country. We have how many European countries? How many European powers? Africa is being scrambled just like that. Consequences very simple, but also very complex. We have direct ones like exploitation of resources and people, like the loss of ethnic groups, cultures, and also increasing political divisions. We also have the disruption of traditional African societies and the imposition of European social, economic, and political systems. These are just words you see, but it's really complex because it's going to cause a lot of unforeseen problems that we're already seeing today. Not only just like the civil wars, but like psychologically, like socially, psychologically speaking, people are losing what they believe in. Like losing belief is really dangerous. And these beliefs are being forcibly lost during the imperialism. So imperialism is no joke. It's pretty serious. We really don't want that. It's like a trauma in a lot of people. The people who are being colonized, it's traumas. And funnily, we often talk about censorship and educational censorship in a lot of countries, including the place we stand on today. But I had a mentor from Britain, and he told me that in Britain, they don't teach about the British Empire in IGCSE courses, so their own curriculum. And they don't talk about how the British Empire. They sort of just like say it in like one lesson or one sentence, really, but all the way if you're like learning A-level courses, you sort of like learn the more in detail about the British Empire, the colonialism. But in their regular courses, they don't talk about it, and it's really just what countries are doing just to prevent people sort of prevent the lack of nationalism, and it's really cruel. And that's what we're trying to do in this class, trying to like recover as much as the truth or the history we see from primary sources as much as possible. So these are the consequences, very long lasting. It's really heavy to think about, but it's there, it's existing, and we have to face it. Any questions right now so far? Okay, let's continue. Next one I want to be talking about Germany. So Germany unified in 1871 under this guy called Otto von Bismarck, and this place Germany literally means a place in the sun. So you see like sun in Japan it's like where the sun first was being rose. It's Japan, or origin of the sun, and then you have in England in Britain it's where the sun never rests. And then in Germany it's a place in the sun. Very interesting. I think, sun is really symbolizing of power, I think. Germany, because it's a newly formed country, it's also the country that gathered all the European nations in the Berlin Conference, but its colonies are definitely much more smaller and more scattered around compared to Britain and France. But it really symbolized prestige and power. So at this stage, not only just like racism, but people like these European nations are competing with each other on the amounts of colonies, on how big the magnitude of the colonies, and how much resources they get from the colonies. It's really just rivalry and comparison all the time. And then, so Germany at the time, they gained about 3 million square kilometers of territory. That's a lot, people. That's a lot of territory in Africa. So it's much of it's gained in the 1880s. So even if it's like smaller than the Britain and French, but like it's still big. It's 3 million square kilometers. Think about it. And not only that, we're not going to focusing on the African colonies. We're going to look at more like attachable to us. We're going to be talking about Oceania and Asia. So Germany at the time they control some Pacific colonies, which later is going to become Japan's because Germany lost in World War One. But these Oceania colonies in Pacific includes German, New Guinea, I pronounce it like that, probably I'm wrong, and a bunch of other islands that are smaller. So these places are used for copra, which is dried coconut production, phosphate mining, really important for agriculture, and also missionary activity. These are religious activities. And as I said, they're mostly small, scattered, but useful for prestige and naval bases, sort of like gas station for those battleship in the middle of the ocean. So a picture of them. Not only they have these African colonies and the German Empire at the time, but also you see these are small scattered islands. And you see here and in China, this is the place where I love so much, Qingdao. This is my absolute favorite place to go. But yes, Qingdao was its colony at the time. It's called Jiaozhougang at the time, which we're going to get into. So Kaohsiung Bay in China at the time, it's called Jiaozhougang. Today, it's called Qingdao. Um, has anybody seen 青岛啤酒 before? Like this green bottle. So the Germans are known for their like love for beers, and so this is a cultural legacy they left in Kaohsiung Bay nowadays Qingdao. But so they got a leased territory in the Shandong province called Qingdao in 1898. So they built port of Qingdao at the time, and their brewery was still very famous today. And this is Qingdao's beer museum, and I went there last summer. It's a pretty fun place. Even if you're a kid, you can still go. Like I didn't try drinks, but I tried their tea, which is still really good. Definitely, it's a really good place. It shows all the history of the beers, and you see how the Germans started this whole beer manufacturing business in Qingdao, and now Qingdao beer is probably like the most famous beer in China. It's very well known even overseas. And this is Qingdao beer. Your parents probably know it. It's a really fun museum. If you go to Qingdao, I'd highly recommend you to go. Not only we have the Qingdao beer, this is just fun, but we also have the underground water system. So when there's like heavy rain, German underground water system did a very well job to prevent flooding. You know that Qingdao is next to this ocean, but Qingdao rarely floods. So it's something that the German helped. So yes, that was in existence. We gotta acknowledge the good stuff as well. Any questions so far? Okay, let's continue. Last but not the least, we have the Japanese. The Japanese is so significant because they're the only non-European power to successfully build a modern empire. Their motivations, we talked about the Meiji Restoration today, last class. It's just the modernization of Japanese from the Meiji Emperor, rapidly modernizing its military, industry, state, really just culture, everything. And then obviously the Meiji Restoration was being inspired by the Europeans, but not only that, Japan wanted to prove themselves because we just talked about European nations think that they're most prestigious, they're over everybody else. But Japan at the time, they wanted to prove to the European nations that they deserve a spot on their table. So this is this ideological justification. They emphasize on the idea of Pan-Asianism, the idea that Asian countries should come together and combat the sphere of influence from the European nations. And specifically, Japan think that they should lead Asia against the Western imperialism. But in practice, we know that Japan mimicked Western colonial exploitation. We see them exploiting in lots of places, and most famously, Taiwan. Taiwan at the time is called Formosa. It became a little. It's sort of like it became independent for a very short time, called the Republic of Formosa. But Taiwan became Japan's first formal colonies, and what Japan did was that they wanted to make Taiwan a model colony to like show the world that Japan, they have the ability to colonize, and not only just to colonize, but show that they have the ability to make this colony good, to make it like really good, like quality good. So what they did was that invested in railroads, in schools, in education, in public health. And this is the good stuff we see, but there's also very harsh suppression of the indigenous uprising. You will still, I don't know if you guys like see 高山族, some of their documentaries, but a lot of them talk about this trauma that they left from Japan, from the Japanese imperialism. That still exists. Lots of traumas are cross generations, and after so many generations, we still see trauma. So again, I just want to emphasize on the imperial legacy, and this is really just no joke. We want to treat this piece of history very seriously. And another very famous one. So Japan, they couldn't do any like Africa stuff, so they sort of do their Asian businesses. They annexed Korea in 1910. So what they did was that they did this land reform, a policy of land reform, which took a lot of land. So Japanese took a lot of land for themselves, for settlers and corporations. They also industrialized railroads, packed factories, and ports for trades, for industrialization. And unfortunately, they also suppressed a lot of Korean culture, including banning Korean language taught at schools, promoting Shinto shrines, and forced the name changes. So these are all things that happened in Korea. So Korea was being because the Japanese lost the Second World War, Korea became independent, and then you see the peninsula fighting again during the Korean War. But that's another story for another day. And finally, we have Manchuria. Manchuria comes a bit later because what really it really just make it bloom was not bloom, it like bloom in a bad way was the 1931 mukbang incident in Manchuria. But Manchuria itself is very rich in coal, in iron and soybeans. So for people who don't know Manchuria, where Manchuria is, it's 东北三省, it's Manchukuo. So it's basically China, but they called it Manchuria anyway at the time. So yes, that was a brief introduction of what the Japanese did in Asia, in their own way of imperialism. So right now it's 9:03. I'm going to push it a little bit further, like quicker. But before we like get into economic imperialism very briefly, do we have any questions so far? Okay, I don't see any questions, so I'm gonna move on. So these two, probably you all know the Opium War. The Opium War is, as you all know, the war between China and Britain. And can anybody just briefly explain to me why it happened? Anybody? I think this is like taught in every single Chinese school, right? So, You probably should know it. You probably really should know it. If you don't know it, I don't know what you learned at school. But that's okay. Let's just go through it very briefly in 1 minute because I feel like a lot of people know it. But the Opium War was a very typical economic imperialism. So the Britain wanted to sell opium to China to balance trade because as we all know, mercantilism emphasizes the idea of maximizing exports. And Britain, however, they're just buying too much tea, silk, and porcelain, those luxury from China. So they sell opium, this drug, to China in order to balance trade. And then a lot of Chinese got addicted. And frankly, China wanted to. They tried to stop the opium trade, but the British sent warships and forced China to open ports. So essentially, why it's economic imperialism is really just because Britain used military forces to make money and gain trade advantages. And so China ultimately lost control over its own economy. So the result is very famous. In 1842, we have the Treaty of Nanjing, Treaty of Nanking, at the time it's called, and Hong Kong was being given to Britain as a colony. And trade ports were also opened. We have extraterritorial rights, which are like Waitan and Shanghai, for those British merchants. So, in short, it's basically Britain controlled trade in China to profit, not just only to rule it politically, which it also interfered its politics. So the essential idea of economic imperialism is trying to control its economy while trying to gain advantages in its governance. Any questions so far? Opium War is like a must know. As Chinese, we need to know this piece of history. But like I said, it's my story is very short. If you need like more detailed explanation, I can send you videos too. Okay, so next is Banana Republic. I want to show like pictures to you all because this is the Banana Republic at the time. These are two companies. So you probably think that these are flags. No, they're not. The first one is called United Fruits. And it's so funny to me. Like a fruits company, why do they have a gun? Like they're supposed to have like a banana on it, but they have a gun. So it shows like something is different. And the second company is another company that becomes 多乐. Have you guys like tried 多乐果冻 before? Like I have a bunch in my fridge. So 多乐 used to be like a big corporate of fruit company. Like it seriously was that. And this Chiquita today it's like previously it's known as United Fruits, but it becomes Chiquita. Chiquita is not the one that you think the girl in Baby Monster. No, that's not like Chiquita. But anyhow, these big firms took control of the Latin American or Central American economy. So basically what happened that these companies, they decides what happens in the country. So they grows all those bananas and they hired a lot of people really just using forced labor to work hard on the banana farms. Those people, because it's forced labor, they don't really get any money. So ultimately, these Central American countries, they couldn't like make their own decisions or choices because it all depends on the selling of the bananas to foreign companies. So they really depend on those companies. So how those like economic imperialism really work is that they are controlling economy to an extent that the country needs to depend on these companies' economies and expenses to sustain itself. So I will actually. I think Banana Republic deserves a video and more explanation, but I will send a video on the Banana Republic in our group chat. But for a little bit of context, how they did it, just because a lot of people, I think it's less familiar for us to know Banana Republic than the Opium War, but how the America, so you have to know that USA took over the control of Banana Republic, really. How they did it was that, first of all, these companies bought a lot of lands, a lot of large areas of fertile lands, very cheaply, and sometimes literally just rob it, like took it from the local farmers, and they created huge plantations that dominated the local economy. They also built like railroads, infrastructure like ports and shipping lines to export those bananas. And they also ultimately supported or bribed local politicians to pass laws that favored the firms, like the companies. And they also even helped overthrow governments that threatened their profit, like Honduras and Guatemala. And these political influence can help them to ensure that there's low taxes and weak labor protections that benefits the company instead of the people or the country. And we just talked about its forced labor. Paid workers have like literally very, very low wages, and they're having harsh working conditions on the plantation. And there's also limited worker union, just because unions are often being banned at the time by the big corporations because they're too powerful and they interfere in politics. And these even if there's like unions or revolts, these are being crushed. So this is Banana Republic. We love 多乐, we love 果冻, we love jelly, we love fruits, but it's a dark history. Economic imperialism at the time. Do we have any question? Okay, let's continue. World War One. Why do I jump into World War One? Because we finished talking about the second wave of imperialism. And I initially thought that this class is going to end a little bit sooner, but I'll just do you guys still want to listen to this part about World War One, how it all started? Are you guys still interested? Are you guys like still pumped up, or you need rest? That's okay. If you need rest, that's okay. If you want to keep listening, we are gonna keep going. Just type in the chat box if you want to keep going. Yeah. Nobody. Oh, else. Okay. Awesome. Great. Raina, you're pumping me up. Awesome. That's dope. So for World War One, if you're like learning this in class, your teacher is gonna tell you an acronym, MAIN, MAIN. So what MAIN stands for are the causes for the World War One. And what it stands for are militarism, alliances, and then imperialism as well as nationalism. We talked about almost everything except for the first two, so I'm going to talk about a little bit. So militarism is like arm race. At the time, Britain was the biggest navy. They have the strongest navy in the world. But then you have Germany, who is a rising power. And so Britain was like, hey, you're probably going to threaten my position or my status as the strongest navy in the whole world. So you have that arm race, like rival between the European nations. You also have the development of new military technologies, like new battleship, which are like, again, rivals. So militarism is the idea of like competing militarily, military technology, military equipment, military strength, abilities, etc., etc. So this is a rivalry that is one of the causes for the World War One, as I talked about, just as a very simple example between Britain and Germany. Second thing is alliances. World War One alliances is like very complicated. So the alliances I show you here are only the simplified ones, and these are like the ones that you will see in textbooks. But World War One, it's world war. So all the colonies we just talked about, like China or Africa, like all the African small countries you see, Ethiopia, or I don't know, like all those countries you see, like Sudan, they get into this war because their mother country get into it. It's almost like your mothers are fighting and you as children have to fight with them. So it's the alliances are really complicated, and not only just like global alliances in Europe itself, it's really complicated. So, but without like getting into like specifically what the alliance is yet, the two like groups where we need to know are, first of all, the triple entente. The triple entente are constituted with Britain, France, and Russia. And then we have the triple alliance, which are Germany, Austria-Hungary, Italy. Italy wasn't really there at the time. That was a mistake, sorry. Anyhow, so we have this like alliance chain, how confusing this alliance was. So does anybody know how the World War One, like the first shot was being shot, like how it all started? Anybody? Let me give a little hint. So this is happening in Serbia, in Bosnia, and someone was visiting and someone got shot. Can you guys like remember what it is? I think if you have had a history class, your teacher probably have definitely talked about it. Okay, so there's a guy. He's called Archduke of Ferdinand. He's an Austrian Archduke, like a royalty really. And he went to Bosnia, and Bosnia was a place that is in Austria-Hungary, but it's like most people there are Serbian, so they're having like this Serbian national identity or nationalism is instead of and they just got conquered. So a lot of people are really not satisfied with the Hungarian rule. And ultimately, this guy from this that gang called Black Hand, and this guy he shot the Archduke of Ferdinand, and he died. So this elicited a lot of like. So Austria was really angry at Serbia because they thought that Serbia is like secretly trying to overthrow, help Bosnia to overthrow, like to gain independence or gain back to go back to Serbia. So it sort of be like so Serbia got 无辜躺枪, if that makes any sense. And then Austria started to fight Serbia, and because Serbia is having the same ethnic as Russia, so they're known as the Slavic population. So Russia was like, if you like go to war with Serbia, I'll go to war with you. And ultimately Germany was like, Austria, I'll go with you. I'll ally with you. From this like I think from this like secret letter between Kaiser Wilhelm and the Austrian king. And ultimately, France and Germany was having a bad relationship just because of its conflicts in land as well as like international interests. So France was like, okay, Germany, you're going to war. We're gonna go to war with you, and we're gonna stand with Serbia and Russia. And Great Britain, because it's a long-term ally with France, Britain was like, okay, I'll go with you, France. So it's like it's like a chain reaction. Everybody's like, you're hitting my friend, so I'm gonna go against you. It's sort of like that. So the alliances was really complicated. It's really chaotic as well. And because of those, like, you help me, I help him, I help she, like, I'll help her, like, all of this grew into a bigger and bigger snowball that ultimately became World War One, the World War that we see, the first World War we see in history. Well, actually, I think the 7 Years' War it was. I think in my opinion, the World War Zero, but conventionally, we're talking about the World War One as the first World War in history. And then we talked about imperialism and nationalism, imperialism, competition, rivalry between these European nations. We talked about imperialism for the last 1 hour or so. And nationalism, again, we talked about like nationalism. Nationalism is the idea of like this strong feeling of loyalty and devotion to our country or to a nation. We see nationalism in China, those pamphlets or the big red notes next to on the screen, next to a bus station. These are all nationalism. And fervor nationalism was really dangerous, and we just saw that in Serbia. In before the World War One, a lot of people are really angry. This ethnic nationalism, wanting to gain independent, ultimately, not only just Serbia, every single country at the time. It's like a powder keg at the time, and it was being lighted by that shot, by that murder or assassination, really, that really elicited the World War One. So, do we have any questions with the cause of the World War One? Okay, so for your test, for like basic stuff, for I don't know, even to the AP level, the acronym MAIN is enough. So if a question asks you, what's the causes of the World War One, you can answer like that. Like answer the four: militarism, alliances, imperialism, nationalism. You'll get full mark. You have to trust me because I've gone through that phase. And it's like the basic stuff you have to know about World War One. So this is a political cartoon or just like propaganda really that says women of Britain say go. So it's like encouraging the men in Britain to fight in the World War One. You see the military here, and then you see the woman says you have to go. So it's really just encouraging and eliciting, like encouraging for a war, I guess. And before our class ends today, I do want to talk about some basic knowledge about World War One that a lot of people miss. So the first thing is that trench life sucks. So in World War One, they do something different than World War Two. They do something called trench warfare. So trench warfare deserves another whole class to talk about just because how brutal it is. But trench warfare is essentially this warfare where there's let me draw because I feel it's gonna be like more like I just feel it's easier to see. So this is the area. So this is called the no man land. So this is no man land. If someone get into here, they're gonna be shot by the people in the trench. So these are the trench. So the ones that are being color coded are the trench. Trench are like 战壕. These are digged underground. So it's not very tall. So like even if you like hold your hand up, your hand is gonna get shot. So everybody's trying to hide under the trench. But the problem with trenches are let me show you a picture. Hold on. I'm really bad at using tech, but this is a picture of a trench. It looks disgusting, and it is. It's built up of dirts, and when it's raining, it's very muddy. So a lot of people get like trench diseases, and there's also a lot of rats. So very bad hygienes. A lot of people literally die because of bad hygienes. Okay, somebody's raising hand. What's the problem right now?
Like, I think one of the trench diseases is called trench foot.
Yes, very good. Trench foot is one of the trench diseases. Very, very well done. It is. So yes, trench foot was one of it, and it's really caused by long-term your feet are in the mud and you get trench foot. And then so going back to our topic about trench warfare, what happened is that every single time, like people are trying to go into the no man land and approach to the other side, so that like sort of like if you get to the other side, you can basically, if you have a lot of people that can take over the other trench, you win. But this is often like takes a very long time, months. And the word became a stalemate. It means like 僵局, nobody wins. So it's a very brutal warfare, not only just like mentally, but also people die not only just because getting shot, but shot, like die because of war, but also much more like the hygienes we just talked about. There's also new technology we have to acknowledge in World War One. We have automobile being put into war. We have machine guns, and we also have tank being invented by the British. I also want to talk about shell shock. So shell shock is PTSD. Does anybody know what PTSD is?
I have a question.
Yes.
Like, they do like for them. Do they have messenger pigeons?
Messenger pigeons?
Yeah.
I'm actually not really sure, but I would imagine like even if there's pigeon, it's still very hard to communicate because if you want to like I guess if you want to communicate like with your own like place, they use telegram more often, right? Because I would imagine that at the time they do have that technology. They have ball so that they can to communicate more effectively instead of using pigeons, which I guess is less it's more risky, it's风险可能会更大一些，用那个鸽子，可能我个人认为它用什么电报啊，会更快一些。Yeah. But great question. Great question. Communication was essential. Like every single war, people are sacrificing themselves by being like the bicycle man, delivering information at a time. So yes, very good question. And for shell shock, getting back to shell shock, PTSD. PTSD is the full name of it. It's called post-traumatic stress disorder. It's a psychological disease. This disease didn't really exist before that. Like it's not really popularly known before that, at least before this war. So after this war, a lot of soldiers, they got like whenever they hear like big bomb, they got like really frightened, or they have constant nightmare. So this is like a series of symptoms of if you have PTSD. And at the time it's called shell shock, because shell is like when the shell of a bullet or like a cannon bullet explode. They're gonna get really scared, and it's called shell shock for that reason. But PTSD was ultimately a lot of soldiers suffered from PTSD at the time. They didn't know the reason. They didn't like psychology wasn't really developed at the time. But PTSD is something that we neglect a lot when we're looking back at this history. Very, very traumatic history, actually, I think. But yes, nowadays PTSD is still a thing. It doesn't need to be like a big war thing. Like you don't have to go to a war to get PTSD, but PTSD can happen after you get traumatized. For example, you have bad childhood memories, or you get bullied, or those really sad things that happen on some people. PTSD still exists, but at the time, PTSD was a new disease, new psychological disorder. Let's say it's really not a disease; it's a disorder. It's a mental disorder. And we just have to remember that this is also a legacy that wars, essentially, like wars, generally leave us with. Any questions? Okay, great. So thank you for everyone for like asking questions. This is awesome. I loved like all the discussions and stuff. So I wanted to talk about Russian Revolution, but I thought for a moment and I was like, I'm not going to be talking about it. I will leave it to you, and I'll send you videos on Russian Revolution because I think Russian Revolution, it deserves a lot of time, and we don't have a lot of time. You guys have to rest. I have to do my homework. So yes. I'm gonna stop here. Next class we're gonna be, so these are what I prepared for DBQ and Russian Revolution, but we're gonna look at it later. If you guys really want to do like AP style history essay together, we can do it next class, because next class is gonna be on Sunday, so we have more time. We can like extend the lesson a bit more longer. But I just want to say, like, once again, thank you for everyone for coming. Before we end this class, I just want to say, like, first of all, we do have classes Sunday, normal time. So please come on time. Thank you for everyone for coming again. And before we go, any more questions on what we have done today? Anything about imperialism or World War One you have any questions with? And I will upload videos as soon as I get free, because yes, I do have homework. I'm a school girl as well. So yes, any questions so far? Okay. If you don't have any question, thank you again so much for coming. It's a Tuesday, and I know some people are in basis and having school, so I really appreciate you coming. Again, thank you for the long-term continuous supports and help. We're doing it together. I'm really grateful for everyone on WeChat as well. Thank you so much. And yes, if you want to subscribe my channel for that 500, so we can actually share our Tencent meeting, that's gonna be great. But it's okay if you don't. That's okay. That's your decision. So yes, thank you everyone for coming. I hope you have a great week. I hope you get good rest before school starts. If you're having school right now, good luck at school. I hope you're doing well. If you have any questions, send stuff in the group chat. And if there's no further question, we're done for today. Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much. I'm going to end this live, and I'm really grateful for everyone. So we'll see you on Sunday, same time, okay? Bye everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye bye. Thank you to everyone who interacted today. Thank you. Thank you.